put you on full screen. And hi everybody, welcome to the training. My name is John, and I'll be assisting our main trainer, who is Lee Anderson, a digital strategist here at AFL-CIO. Can you do me a quick favor, if this is your first training? If it's not, please just bear with me. If you can see the welcome sign on your screen share, if you can just press 1 on your phone keypad, and then I'll see your hand raise here in the system, and I'll know that you can see it. You know what? That was all for nothing.
Were you muted?
Something wasn't right. Hi, folks. This is John with AFL-CIO. Could you press 1 on your phone keypad if you can hear me? Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, my name is John. I'll be assisting in today's training. Lee Anderson is the trainer. He's the digital strategist here at AFL-CIO. He's one of them, actually, and a very good one. You should be able to see the screen share. It says, welcome. Our training will start at 1:05 p.m. Could you press 1 on your keypad if you can see that screen? Great, I see some hands going up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put those down, and I'm going to hand it over to Lee. Lee, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, John, and good afternoon to everyone who is on the call, on the phone, and looking at this on screen share. And thanks for joining us for today's 1U digital training. We are going to talk a little bit today about the RePurpose program. RePurpose is something that any of you who have either were members with or affiliated with the AFL back in 2012, there's a very good chance that you may have heard of this program. But whether you have or you haven't, we're going to just kind of go through it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what our thinking was behind developing this program, exactly what the program is and how it works. And then we'll talk a little bit about, some of the fun things that folks have done and can do with it. Before we get into that, I just want to point your attention to the screen. Once again, my name is Lee Anderson. My Twitter handle is there at Lee_Anderson, as well as my email address, landerson@aflcio.org. I urge all of you to take note of that. Follow me on Twitter, and you should totally feel free to, drop me an email, if you're either interested in this program or using it on the ground with your volunteers, or even for anything else. Whatever it may be, I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there and that you folks notice that it's there. So, with that all being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Before I start, I always put a slide here to just explain for the folks that may not know. 1U is the hashtag that we use for anything and everything that is union related on Twitter, which is the reason why we branded it as such, the 1U digital training series. So if you do want to tweet about this, I'm probably going to tweet about it myself in a few moments. If you want to tweet about being on this call with us and all of the wonderful things that you're learning by means of the AFL-CIO's 1U digital training program, you should totally tweet about it and make sure you use that hashtag. As I've stated already, my name is Lee Anderson. I usually do this presentation with, my good friend Liz, but she's like tied up being a senator and stuff. So today you just got me. Hope that's okay. And we're going to go ahead and get into it. What is RePurpose? So if you think along the lines of an airline miles rewards program or, hotel points, any of those reward program type deals, and then you couple that with the interactive element of online gaming, and then we're going to mix in a little bit of good old-fashioned volunteer and activism. What we get from that hodgepodge of ingredients is the RePurpose program. It essentially is a way that we have found to reward our volunteers, to get it to be a little bit more interactive between not only us and our volunteers, but also amongst the volunteers themselves, and as a way to further and empower them to take more action. All of these elements combined are what we collectively refer to as the RePurpose program. So how this program in general works is that folks, the first point, they come in and volunteer. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on as we go on through this presentation, but you'll see that this program starts and ends with our volunteers and them coming in and taking action. But as you see there, folks come in, they volunteer. Once they've taken that action and they volunteer, that information gets entered into the My Campaigns database within the LAN. That person will automatically be generated an email that basically just says to them, hey, you're an awesome person. You came in today. You did this great thing with us. And so here's a reward for you. That will give you the information, the website to get to RePurpose, which for all of you folks, if you're interested, it's repurpose.workersvoice.org. Gives you that address and tells you to log in and start spending the points that you've earned. Just one really quick note about that, since we're talking about people coming in. You can either just actually navigate to the repurpose.workersvoice.org page and actually manually start an account, or as we see here, like within this example, and this is probably a greater number of our volunteers who come into the program this way, just simply by taking action. We've made sure that when folks go into any of the AFL-CIO's offices or our affiliates' offices, when their volunteers take action and that information goes into the LAN, that information automatically kicks over to the RePurpose program so that folks can get points. So even if they don't know about the program, they can still earn points that they will be able to redeem within the program once they are aware that it exists and that they have these points. So let's talk a little bit briefly about some of the things that you can do, or the things that we can get our volunteers to do that will earn them points that they can use in the RePurpose program. You'll notice here we've got these divided up into online and offline activities. We'll talk about some of the offline ones first, of course, because this, as we mentioned, was an idea that was born out of, traditional activism and what our volunteers had already been doing. So some of these activities include things like doing a Canvas shift, doing a phone bank shift, or maybe even coming in and just doing some data entry in the office there. Those are all actions that the volunteers can take on the ground there to earn points inside of the RePurpose program. Some of the online actions you'll notice in the little section directly underneath the offline actions. Some of the online actions are doing things like signing a petition, matching friends on the Friends and Neighbors virtual phone bank tool, which is another tool that we offer here, and we also do trainings on it as well. For folks that haven't heard of it. Making calls within that same program will also allow our volunteers to earn points. Pledging to volunteer and recruiting friends are also ways. Those are some of the most common ways, that folks are coming in and taking action on these issues. And so we wanted to make sure that we captured all of those ways and are certain to give points for any of our volunteers who are taking those actions. So now the question is, all right, I've gone in and, I got all these points. I took all these actions. I feel really good about myself. But now what the heck am I supposed to do with all of these points that I've accrued? So we'll talk now a little bit about some of the things that you can redeem the points on. And we generally divide these things up into 3 buckets by cost. We've got a low point bucket, a medium point bucket, and a high point bucket. The low cost items, as you can see available in this screenshot here over to the left, we've got some here that are like 20 points, 10 points, versus other things that are like 25,000 or 700. So you can kind of get a feel for which one of those 3 buckets those items would fall into. But some of the low point items are things like digital yard signs. Medium point items are things like online ads, or even donating to supporting striking workers, which once again, even that, when I say donating to support the striking workers, and that's part of the beauty of this program, is that we're not actually asking our activists for any money. We're essentially using the points that they've earned and converting that into dollars to send to support striking workers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that particular aspect of it in a moment. Some of the high point items that folks can redeem the repurpose points for are things like, once again, creating an online phone bank. We talked a little bit about that in the last slide. That's the Friends and Neighbors tool, also known as FAN. You can pay for a Working America Canvas team. That was another item that we had in 2012 that actually did really well, and a lot of folks were very interested in. You'll also notice there down at the very bottom in a slightly smaller font, got other ideas, please share. As I mentioned a moment ago, this program starts with our volunteers. It was born from activism, from us, saying, this is really important. We can't run these campaigns without our volunteers. How do we reward them? How do we keep them coming back? How do we make them feel empowered? And I inherently believe that no one knows the answers to those questions the way that you all do, the way the folks who are actually on the ground, who are in those campaign offices, in those small towns. You folks know better than anyone exactly what things will motivate your your volunteers, what things they would like to see, and of course, what is most needed, for you all on the ground. So once again, I shared my email address at the beginning of this presentation. If you do have any ideas, whether that's ideas toward things that your volunteers can either earn points on or spend the points on, I would love to hear them. So we'll talk a little bit about, what your volunteers will see here in the account screen. I don't want to spend too much time here, but I do feel like it is worth pointing out, and one feature in particular that I really want to point your attention to. So, in general, it will give you all of the regular profile-y account-ish type stuff. What your name is, where you're based at, your email address, all that good stuff. But this will also let you know pretty nifty things like your lifetime points, so that you can kind of look back over the history of your activism, if you will, and see how many points you've earned within the system total. If you redeem any items, or maybe you've suggested an item via the program, maybe you've got a volunteer that thinks something should be available to redeem that is not there. In addition to just getting an email, we'll also correspond via email, but within the program itself, if there are any notifications or correspondence that have to be had, or that has to be had rather, with any user, it will show up here in their account screen. You can also see the other connected accounts, as it mentioned there. I'm not sure whether or not you all can see this. It may be too small. If it is, I apologize. But you see that there, it says Facebook and then Google, and then next to it there's a little highlighted thing that says unlink. That basically just allows you to sign into the RePurpose program using credentials basically that already exist. So you can sign in. Most people usually stay signed into their Facebook, or folks who are Google Plus users, they usually stay signed into that. So you can also use that to log into this. It will also, I'm going to skip a little bit and then come back to the thing I really want to talk about. It also will give you a history of the actual items that you have redeemed. So if there are any yard signs, any digital yard signs there, as you can see there in the screen share, they'll show up there. Also with little buttons below them so that you can easily share them. You can also see past redemptions, things that you've gotten in the past, as well as any tasks that you've completed, and those will show up over here. And those are the things, the actions that our volunteers actually took to earn them the points to redeem in the first place. What I skipped and I want to come back to is this box right here, to transfer points. This, and if you'll remember that in the beginning of this, I briefly talked about how this was an idea in part that came from the school of thought around online gaming, which is essentially just increasing interactivity. I don't know, and unfortunately, that's one of the things that sucks about doing these things via the phone is that even though you all can, do like what John mentioned earlier and pressing the number one on your keypad, it really is so much easier when I can just actually see you all. But since I can, I'm just going to have to, kind of talk around it. But if any of you have played games like Farmville, or Candy Crush or any of those things online, I normally like to ask for a show of hands, but I'm almost positive that at least 50% of the folks on the phone have played one, if not both of those games. But for folks that haven't, one of the biggest things about those games and why they're so popular is because they have this amazing interactive trait to it. So like, for instance, with Farmville, you may be trying to grow a corn crop, and maybe there's like, mad locusts or something who keep coming and they're eating up your crops. Well, you can actually talk to one of your friends online and say, hey, I need some help with this crop. Maybe can you, I don't know, maybe get a crop duster over here or something to, help take care of this locust problem for me. But it once again just encourages interactivity between, you and your friends. Oftentimes people that are not even in the same room or same physical space as you, but you're still able to get that encouragement, and kind of feed off of each other. So we took that concept and incorporated that in here, by letting people transfer points. This is particularly powerful and impactful when we look at, some of the higher point items. If you look 2 slides ago, or rather 1 slide ago, we talked about some of the medium and high point items like creating an online phone bank or paying for a Working America Canvas team. And once again, let me just say really quickly there, I think this is a great place to interject. The reason why we have to divide them up into low, medium, and high point items, and it's also the same reason why completing different tasks will earn you a different amount of points, is because at the end of the day, our point economy, we've actually worked it out so that these points correspond with an actual dollar amount. Paying for a Working America Canvas team is going to take some money. It's going to take a little bit more money than, say, just coming up with a digital yard sign, which is essentially simply just an image file. So for some of those more high point items, like paying for a Working America Canvas team, you can't see it here. I think I cut it off down there in the screen share, but this is about 25 or 30,000 points. Like it may even be more than that, but it's a lot of points. So in that manner, things like being able to transfer points now has become hugely helpful, because where one volunteer may not have enough points to do something like that, but it may be really necessary. You may need some more, canvassers on the ground to help you, knock out some of these doors before, GOTV ends, in which case you can get with some of your volunteer friends and say, hey, you know what, y'all, we really need this, and I've got X amount of points and you've got X amount of points. Why don't we put them together and see if we can get this thing done? And so ways like that, we found it to be hugely helpful, and we actually were correct in our thinking. As I mentioned before, in 2012, hiring canvassers as well as supporting striking workers were actually some of the more popular things that were redeemed via the RePurpose program. And part of the reason for that as well, before I go on, I also just want to say, part of the reason for that, we did some polling, we talked to a lot of our folks, and we found that, these volunteers, one of the things that they want most is to feel empowered and to feel truly appreciated, And not to say that they may not be appreciative of a t-shirt or a bumper sticker or something like that, but when we give them things like this, things that actually empower them to make a real difference in the campaign, that gives them even more incentive to keep coming back and to continue volunteering with us and taking action. So we'll talk a little bit, and I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself with some of the things that I was saying here. We'll talk a little bit about, under the hood, how this whole thing works, then we'll go forward and start to wrap this thing up. But as I mentioned before, and you'll notice here that this thing kind of goes in a big circle. And as I mentioned before, this whole program starts and ends with volunteering. Folks come in, they take action. That information is entered, they do the data entry, it goes into the LAN, into My Campaigns. Once it hits My Campaigns, it automatically kicks something over to the RePurpose program and says, yo, this person did this action, we need to give them X amount of points. As you see here, they get those points. This next circle right here, directly after points, is probably the most important step in this whole thing. And this is the reason why it works. Because ultimately, since there is a point economy in place here, since these points actually equal real dollars, that means that essentially what we are allowing our volunteers to do is actually have a say in how we run program. So now it's gone beyond just saying, hey, you know what, we really appreciate you. Here's this thing that you can always look upon and have a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart because we gave it to you to say thanks. Now we're not only saying to them thanks, but we're also saying we thank you and we appreciate you and we trust you so much that we're going to allow you a little bit of say in how we are actually spending programmatic money, where we're actually putting some of our firepower to get these races, to win these races and to make sure that we're putting labor-friendly candidates and policies in place. And of course, once we've done that and we've empowered and incentivized them in that way, then what do they do naturally? Come back and take more action with us and volunteer again, and this whole circle just kind of keeps on moving, which is why I say that this begins and ends with volunteering. Everything that we do via this program is to drive our folks to continue to come back, keep taking action, keep knocking out those phone calls, keep getting on the doors, and essentially just continue being a resource that we can count on to win these races. So, as we start to wrap up, for us as organizers, the most important reasons why we would want to use RePurpose is because it empowers our volunteers, as we just talked about. It provides incentives for them. And I happen to think that these are the best types of incentives that we can provide because the incentives themselves are what empower the volunteers. It reinforces our best practices in terms of how we are interacting and engaging with our volunteers and keeping them in the loop and bringing them back to take action. And also it can help us as campaigners to build our local resources. If going into a race or beginning on a particular issue that, you don't have any money budgeted for ads, but you think that it could be hugely impactful to maybe run some very targeted Facebook ads, to help you get the word out or, just educate people or, actually get them to register to vote or whatever it is that you're trying to do, you can actually build your own internal program around that and saying to your volunteers, hey, we're going to need to run some ads. But we don't really quite have the budget money that we need for it. So we're going to use the RePurpose program so that we all can accrue points that we can all put together and use toward making this massive ad buy, so that we'll be able to bring this thing home and knock it out of the park. Reasons like that are the reason why it's impactful for us as professional campaigners and organizers to want to use a tool like RePurpose. In addition to just giving our volunteers what they need, it's also giving us what we need because we can build resources around it. For our volunteers, once again, we want to push them to use RePurpose because, once again, it gives them a voice in how we spend resources. That is an incentive, and it empowers them all in once. The other reason, as we mentioned, it builds local support for local priorities. Our volunteers, a lot of times, or in fact, most times, pretty much always, they live there in that community. Oftentimes I've run into folks on the ground who not only do they live there in that community, but they were born and raised, they grew up, they never left that community, and so no one is going to care about those communities like our volunteers, like the people who work there, live there, play there, grew up there, their mom lives there, everybody is there, We want to give them what they need to support the priorities that they see as being important on a local level. Quick footnote there, we of course always want to maintain some say on that. And so any item that we have up on the site for redemption will always be cleared through, the locals on the ground there, the state feds, the CLCs, so that we're making sure that anything that we're allowing our volunteers to do is going to be something that programmatically makes sense for us. But we still want to empower them to have, that small bit of say. And last but not least, it's fun. As I mentioned, there's a little bit of an interactive element there where you can kind of put your points together with folks. There's also a leaderboard. It shows you other folks that are in your area. You can see how you're stacking up against them. And these are ways that we found to encourage our volunteers and keep them going and kind of just make sure that they never feel like they're out there alone. They always know that there are other folks who are also taking action, many of which are in their area, also trying to help us to move the ball and advance our issues. So with that being said, I know we'd budgeted an hour time-wise for this training, but I really didn't need all that. And I figure that this is better anyway, because then that gives you all lots of time to ask questions. So if you do have any questions, as John mentioned at the onset of this training, feel free to press the number 1 button on your keypad, and we will see your virtual hand go up here, and we'll call your name and answer your question.
Lee, maybe you can sing the Jeopardy waiting music, while we're waiting for a hand to go up here.
Actually, I literally did sing it on the last call. I'll spare you all today. I won't sing for you all today. On the last one, I really did do it, though.
We do appreciate that. Okay, I think you did a wonderful job. I don't see anybody's hands going up. So.
All right. Well, excellent. And before I let you all go, firstly, I just want to say thank you for listening. We appreciate you logging on and being a part of our 1U digital training experience. The second thing that I want to remind you all of, in fact, I'm going to go back, is my name is Lee Anderson. My Twitter handle as well as my email address are on the screen right now. I urge you, if you have any further questions about the tool, if you're anything like me, I oftentimes don't think of some of those burning questions until like 3 o'clock the next morning or something like that. I'll like randomly wake up in the middle of the night like, I wonder. So if you're one of those people as well, feel free to send me an email, preferably not at 3 in the morning, but whenever you send it to me, I will respond. And thank you all for listening, and have a good one.
Thanks a lot, Lee. Okay, go ahead.